Welcome to the High Level Wife Podcast. This is a space for Christian wives who love God, want their marriage healed, and are done performing, fixing, striving, or trying to control their way to change. Here we're going to talk about marriage God's way through right order, surrender, heart posture, and spirit-led transformation. This is not self-help, it's discipleship. My name is Chelsey Holm, and my role is to help you move from awareness into obedience so real healing, wholeness, and restoration can take root. Let's begin. Welcome back to the High Level Wife Podcast. I'm your host, Chelsey Holm, and today I want to talk to you about something that has marked my life, marked my marriage, marked my faith, and honestly, if I'm not careful, I forget about it. But I'll tell you what, I have intentionally made a practice of remembering all of the times I've seen God work in my life, big and little, so that I don't forget. Because when we're in hard seasons, it's easy for us to start believing that this is just how it will always be. But scripture tells a different story, and it tells a story that God is the God of suddenly, not because he always moves quickly, but because when he decides to move, he can change everything faster than we thought possible. And it's so far beyond our understanding. Let me share a story with you. 2 Kings chapter 6-7. There's this intense famine in the land. There's hopelessness, starvation, desperation. People are literally surviving at impossible levels. Like there's a mention in chapter 6 of two moms that come together and they decide to boil their children and eat them, and one actually follows through with it, and then the other one hides her child and won't share with the other woman. And so like that's the level of hunger and desperation that we're we're experiencing here, right? So that's an impossible situation, but God speaks. Elisha is the prophet during this time, and he says, tomorrow, not years from now, not eventually, tomorrow, provision, abundance, and breakthrough, right? But what happens? Someone, this is the commander, like the head guy of the king, he immediately says, even if God opened the windows of heaven, how could this happen? And actually, he was punished for that. Elisha told him that he would not experience this provision from the Lord, and he didn't. He died. He was killed. But this is us. This is what we do. We measure God's power through our own understanding and through our own limited lens of our perspective. And we don't understand that God is the God of suddenly. Um, there's a problem with that is if you can fully explain how God must do it, you probably aren't depending on him. Ooh, yeah, right? Ooh, that one probably struck a nerve. I'm going to say it again. If you can fully explain how God must do it, you probably aren't depending on him. And then what happens? Okay, so let's go back to the story. Sorry. My brain. If you've listened to me for long enough, you know my brain. All right, so there's four lepers, right? They're um sitting outside of town, and I love this because they're like, well, we're gonna die outside of town, or we could go into the town and we could die there because there's no food anywhere, so let's go into this nearby enemy army camp, and they might kill us, but we're gonna die anyway, so let's just try it, right? So they go to this camp, and God miraculously makes the enemy army hear these phantom sounds of chariots and horses, and they flee. They leave everything behind. Like you hear later on in the story that like they went to see if in fact this enemy army had like armor and weapons and all of this stuff so that they could escape quicker. And God provided a whole enemy army encampment with tent after tent filled with riches and food and everything. It was provision instantly. But who would have had that on their bingo card, right? Who could have understood what God was going to do? Nobody could have understood because God performed a miracle, right? It's not because the people were powerful. It's because God is. God changed an impossible situation overnight. Now, I want to bring this home for you because some of you are listening and thinking, my marriage is too far gone, or nothing is changing, or I've prayed forever. I actually had a wife who prayed for her husband's salvation for years and years and years and experienced years of hurt. And then her husband did get saved, and he walked through faithfully and got baptized, and she left him. And it breaks my heart because this is what happens is too often we're in hard seasons and we walk away. And what we don't realize is that the season of abundance is coming, but we have to hang tight through the hard seasons so we can get there. So I want to share something. And if you've listened to me for long enough, you know I've shared this story multiple times. Like this is our marriage testimony that my husband was like, this was back in what 2013 or something, 2014, I don't know, beginning of 2013, 2014. Sorry, dates hard. Anyway, we were in a bad spot. We were on the brink of divorce. He literally said, I'm gonna go take a shower, I'm packing my stuff, and I'm leaving. And I was just sitting on the couch in the living room and like, God, there's nothing that I can do. Like, I trust you. I know you're good and I know you're gonna care for me. Honestly, but it sucked and I didn't know what to do. So I just sat there. Okay. But here's what happened. I call that a miracle shower because he came out, he sat down next to me and he said, there is no way that I can justify biblically leaving you. He's like, that's just the straight up truth. And he's like, I'm staying. And I was just like, what? Like, it was just crazy. Like, God suddenly shifted, it reminded my husband of his truth in his heart. And so when people ask me, like, what's the most important thing in like for a marriage to be successful, I'm like, you have to have the foundation of truth. You have to do it God's way. He designed it. He made you. He created your function inside marriage. He has to be the foundation. Okay. And then I have, there's a client of mine. She was one of my one-on-one clients. And now she actually works alongside me in High Level Wife. And her husband joined High Level Husband because they went on this marriage advance weekend over a year ago. And it just totally changed his mind. Like they had this dream forever to move to Colorado. But when they went all in and experienced this transformation of their hearts and in their marriage, today they actually just signed a lease to move to Texas. And God has provided every single thing for them. Like everything changed in a moment for them when they were obedient to God. And in 2014, after, this miracle shower, my husband had been praying for a change of scenery to kind of get out to rebuild our marriage. And he got a call for a mobilization position in El Paso, Texas. And we were already praying for something. So when the call came, we were like, yes, immediately, that's it. And we were obedient. We put our house in the market and God sold our house in Wisconsin right before Christmas in the dead of winter in 3 months. Like just crazy. Like God provided. We were obedient. Okay, these are different circumstances, but it's the same pattern that it's not control, it's not a perfect strategy, and it's not figuring everything out, but it was surrender. Surrender was the key in every single part of this. Now, I do want to make an important clarification here because God being the God of suddenly does not mean he always moves immediately. Some miracles happen slowly, painfully over years. Okay, but what surrender does is this, it creates the space because when you stop controlling or grasping or forcing or leaning on yourself, you create room for God to move, right? The Israelites had to leave Egypt. God parted the sea for them, but they had to leave Egypt first. This is why so many people know this verse. It's on your walls, it's on your clothes. Proverbs 3:5-6 says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Not some, all. So let me ask you this hard question. Where have you decided already that this cannot change? Because maybe you've mistaken your limitation for God's limitation. Oof. And our God is not a limited God. Our God is orchestrating and weaving together plans across all people's, all timelines in ways that we can't imagine. There's no such thing as coincidence. If you read further, I think it's in chapter 8 or towards the end of chapter 7 of that Second Kings passage. There's the woman that Elisha had brought her son back to life. And he tells her that there's going to be a famine. And so she leaves. And then she comes back and she's going to wants to reclaim her house and her land. And she just happens to show up as the king is asking about like just go read the story for yourself. I can't remember all the details, but like just happens. No, God orchestrates everything and we cannot understand. Okay. Some of you need to hear this that your marriage is not beyond God. Your husband is not beyond God. Your finances are not beyond God. Your fear is not beyond God. Okay. But you have to bring those things in submission to Him under His authority. Our feelings are not authority. Our circumstances are not authority. Our God is the authority in our life. And we walk from victory in the finished work of the cross. We are new creations. We have the power of the Holy Spirit living in us and enabling us to do what we could never do on our own, including have patience, right? And walk in the fruits of the Spirit and produce those. When we abide in God, He abides in us. So your assignment is not to figure out how. Your assignment is to trust, obey, surrender, create space, and remain faithful. Because God can change more in a moment of His power than years of your striving ever could. And woe is the woman who thinks that through control, she is going to create or produce the results that she so desperately wants. Because it always does the opposite and it leads to destruction and it actually tears down your house. So if you're in a season where everything feels impossible, I want to encourage you and challenge you to keep showing up, but most importantly, keep surrendering, because the heart posture of complete and full surrender to God and reliance on Him and belief that He is the God of suddenly, that is what changes everything. Or that's what I don't want to say that's what changes everything, because as I said, God does not work in ways that we understand, nor in our timeline, right? A day to Him is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. Okay. But it creates the environment for Him to work how He wills. Okay. So keep surrendering, because you may be closer to suddenly than you realize. I'll see you in the next episode. If this episode stirred something in you, but high level wife feels like too big of a step right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't have to jump ahead to honor what God is doing. I created a short guided experience called From Awareness to Surrender for women who aren't ready for ongoing support but know they can't stay where they are. It includes 3 short teachings, a guided exercise, and a prayer I recorded over you. It's going to help you move from awareness into real response. You'll find the link in the show notes. And if you're not ready even for that, don't rush past this moment. Sit with God and ask Him what obedience looks like next.